A lot of advice I give other people who are interested in doing this is being realistic
My
about.
name is Lex, and this is Bronx. We bought and renovated this Airstream and this camper, this tiny home, then this Airstream, then another Airstream, and finally we designed and built this tiny home. And now I'm on a mission to learn about the best travel experiences across the world. Welcome to Experiential Travel. Today's guest is an incredible host. She does direct bookings, but also a super host on Airbnb. It is a stunning A-frame. We talk to a lot of hosts that have A-frames, and we see tons of A-frames on Airbnb, but her A-frame is just, there's something special about it. There's something real special about it. It's called Appalachian A-frame on the west side of North Carolina in a small town called Boone. We use the same property management software, so I'm super excited to dive into Lodgify and see how she likes it and see how she's able to operate that with her direct bookings. I want to focus on that. I also want to focus on the interior design that she's created because it really, really is. I mean, it's, as you guys know, when you build a good product, you don't have to sell or market. The pictures do the talking themselves, and the reviews do the follow-up talking, and that is what makes good hosts great, is that when they develop a great product, the bookings just come in. And that's what they have done at Appalachian A-Frame. And I am so excited to introduce our next guest, Miss Emily South.
Thanks for having me on.
Of course. So walk me to the beginning. How did you guys build Appalachian A-Frame? Did you guys buy Appalachian
We
A-Frame?
did not, and that's like one of the number one questions I get asked. I get DMs about it all the time. Did you build it? Do you have plans? Can we have your plans? We didn't build it. And I think part of the reason, going back to why you feel our place stands out so much to maybe some of the other A-frames that are sort of taking over Instagram right now, is ours is a vintage A-frame that was built in 1970, kind of at the peak of their popularity. They were very popular second home builds in the 60s and 70s, and that's when ours was originally constructed. And the wild thing about it is it's had kind of an interesting life. I think at different times it's been a duplex that had shared renters in it. Someone at one point owned it for like a decade as a family home, and they in the 90s, and they did a big remodel on it. Originally, when it was built, it didn't have the stone exterior that it has now. The homeowner in the 90s who did the big reno and had it as his family home, he did that. So that was part of kind of the stuff he did to the house. He was a carpenter. And so I think he built a lot of the cabinetry that's in the A-frame today. So that, yeah, that's kind of an interesting fact about it because people ask us all the time and assume that we built it, and we didn't. We came in at a time when it had been a rental for probably like 5 years at least. And I don't think those owners had an emotional attachment to the property. I think there's a difference in when you are emotionally attached to a property and how you maintain it and care for it and just the value that you put on it. So when we came in, it was kind of in rough shape at the time that we bought it, and it didn't look anything like it does now, really. It was all original TNG that the stain had oxidized, so it had that lovely hot wing orange cast to it. They had kind of leaned hard into, I think, traditional, or what people think people want when they're going to a cabin in the woods. So there was a like taxidermied animal on the loft railing, a lot of bear print items in the house, things like that. And I don't know, I think there's a way you can do that and have it look really cool and be whimsical. And then there's just something that's a little dated, not necessarily what our family would have been looking for when we were looking for a place to stay when we went to the mountains. And that was the whole point of the decisions we made when we came in to renovate the space, was if we didn't own this, would it catch our eye? Would it be a place we would want to come to with our kids and our dogs? And so that was sort of the motivating force behind a lot of the decisions we made when we came in to kind of breathe some new life into the space because it needed it.
Absolutely. Are you originally from North Carolina?
I am not. I grew up in Ohio. Yeah, born and raised in Ohio, and I moved down here after I graduated from Ohio University.
And is your husband originally from North Carolina?
No, he's from Ohio too. He moved here because
What?
of me.
Oh, I love that. I love that. What made you guys move to North Carolina?
I have an older sister who's quite a bit older than I am, and she had come down here and was living here when I was in college and she was turning 30. Like that's how big of an age gap there is between the two of us. And so I spent a lot of time here visiting her when I was in school and fell in love with the area. And I graduated in, I think, '04. And I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, in a suburb of it. And just at that time, economically, there were not a lot of jobs for a fresh grad out of school. There was a lot more opportunity down here. So I made the move probably within 6 months of finishing school.
You guys bought this property after it was, I mean, obviously it was built in the 70s, and then I
Yeah.
came in and renovated it. What was the mindset going into purchasing this property? Was it always like, hey, I want to get a short-term rental, I want to get into real estate? Or was it like, hey, we want to have a second home for our family? What was kind of the mindset behind this purchase?
It was a little bit of both, but probably 70% it needed to be an asset for us. You and I were talking before we started recording, and my husband's a director of photography. And for, gosh, like probably 15 plus years now, he's owned his own production company. I use the term loosely because it's really just him freelancing. And I'm self employed because after our daughter was born, I became a yoga teacher so that I could work a little bit, but primarily focus on taking care of her because he travels a lot for work. When you're self-employed, you don't have the safety net that a lot of people with corporate jobs do. We needed to diversify assets, have a lot in the mix in terms of our retirement plan. And we'd gotten to a point where we had cash that we needed to invest in something. And there's all kinds of limitations on your retirement accounts and things that you can do to a certain point. And so this seemed like a really viable option for us to invest that money, but then also have it be a secondary business that would generate revenue and income for us. So that's kind of how that whole idea came about. And I was not open to it. I'll be very honest. Initially, at the time this was coming up, we had also just had two other babies back to back. So we had gone from being a single child family to now all of a sudden we had three kids, two of which were under the age of 2 or 3 at the time that this really became a serious conversation. So I was a little bit skeptical at first about how this was all going to go, but he eventually talked me into it.
I love it. How far is Boone or Appalachian A-frame to your guys' primary?
So it's only 2 hours, and that was really important. And a lot of advice I give other people who are interested in doing this is being realistic about if you're going to use a management property or if you're going to self-manage and how involved do you want to be and hands-on you want to be realistic about the location of that property. Because if we had something out on the coast in North Carolina, you cannot get out to the coast and back in one day. And I will be very honest, I struggle with if I have a day that I need to go up there and do something, you would think that a 2 hour drive wouldn't be that big of a deal. Well, it's 4 round trip. And so that leaves, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to do it within the hours my kids are in school, my window is extremely tight to get up there, be productive, and then get home in a reasonable time. So for us, we needed something that was within that 2 hour drivable window that if we had to in a day, you could get there and back. That was really important to us. From the standpoint of I did want to self-manage, and anything more than that, I would have had to involve a third party.
We talk about this in steps, and first step is obviously the education part. And so if someone's watching this video, this is step one is learning the education part. Step two would be choosing your market. And I think that when choosing your market, it's very important to do what you just mentioned and identify what type of role you want to play within your short-term rental business. And if you want to do that more hands-on approach, you have to be able to find a property, exactly what you said, an hour, 2 hours away so that you're able to make that drive. Our portfolio is 7.5 hours away. So I'm not driving there if something happens.
Yeah.
I have to have an on-site team that can help manage because that drive is just way too long. And if I want to go to Arizona, it's not a one-day thing. I'm there for 4, 5, 6 days. And so I think that's really important for people when they're listening, is when choosing your market, choose it in the sense of distance away from your home. So I really like that tidbit. We call it the 60-30-10 rule as well in choosing which place you want to create your short-term rental business. 60 minutes from a big city, 30 minutes from a final destination, and then 10 minutes from civilization, because people want to know that they're not in the absolute middle of nowhere. Does your property kind of fit within that 60-30-10 rule?
I mean, honestly, it does. It's very drivable from Charlotte. A ton of our visitors come from the same geographic area we live. Interestingly enough, we pull a lot of people from Florida. They like to come up for ski season because we're kind of the closest spot to get to for that. And then, like you said, Boone is the next biggest town to us, and it's a huge college town. App State campus is there. And then we're about 15 minutes from their main downtown street. So it's very quiet out by where we are, but you're not more than 30 minutes from any of the major tourist destinations. We're like 30 minutes from Blowing Rock, which is another very popular town that people visit out in Western North Carolina. There's 3 ski resorts we're within 30 minutes of, and a couple other attractions up there. Banner Elk and Seven Devils, that's where people go snow tubing. There's an alpine coaster. So we're removed enough so you have that feeling of kind of being out and secluded, but you're very close to anything you would want to do on a normal vacation, whether it's eating or touristy stuff like that.
So that next part would be choosing your land, but obviously when you have a structure already on your land, you're taking care of your land zoning and permitting is all taken care of already, which is the nice part of buying a stick-built home that is already rocking and rolling. With that being said, what drew you to the specific structure? I always let everyone that we talk to and all the guests have a reoccurring theme that it's your occupancy rate is mostly going to be dictated for your market, but then your nightly rate is really going to be dictated off the uniqueness or the aesthetic of your property. And so we found that the more unique your structures, the more you can charge. Now, occupancy rate obviously has a role in that, but what kind of drew you to choosing this A-frame?
When we were first looking a lot, it was a weird time. So we were shopping for property in early 2019, and it's weird. The market hadn't blown up the way that it has now. Kind of that weird time since COVID. We were right before all that happened, and we couldn't even get up there to look at stuff before it would go under contract. It was, I'd have to ask our agent what was going on at the time. I don't know if there just wasn't a lot of inventory out there, but the things that were coming up really just kind of looked like other houses. And for me, I didn't want a second house that was just another house that was cookie cutter or didn't feel unique or special in any way. I know some people love log cabins and are really drawn to that. That's not necessarily our particular vibe. My husband's super into very modern stuff, which can be a little frustrating for me because that can lean cold. I think it has a place and you can combine that into it. But the end of the day, I was like, we're building a place for our family and families like ours. So it has to have that warmth to it. Wanted something with character. And I was just getting frustrated, frankly, because everything that did come up was very typical, either log cabin-y or just very, really just hard traditional cabin appeal. I've told this story before, so I apologize if anyone else has ever heard this, but when we were doing all this, I love making boards on Pinterest. And I had one that was called Money Love. And this was actually very, very long before we even started talking about this. And one of the very first things that got put on it was a picture of a black A-frame that I think is located in Vermont. And and so when this one, how we found this house is weird as well. But when this one finally popped up in our search, it was it for me. I was like, this is the one I want. Like, we'll have our agent go scout it for us so we don't waste time, because that was the other thing. We were wasting a lot of time going and looking at non-viable properties. And then we thankfully got a good agent involved who was able to preview things for us. And she knew the market because she had owned rental properties as well. So she could get a feel of whether something was going to be a good investment or not. And that started to save us a lot of time. So that for me, it was the most unique, and it was still not anywhere near what we would have wanted it to be, but it was the most unique thing that we saw at the time in a really good geographic location.
You mentioned that it was a unique experience buying it. What was that experience?
We were just having a really hard time, getting pretty frustrated, stuff going under contract left and right. This just happened to pop up in a search notification that John had set up, and it wasn't even on MLS yet because it was for sale by owner. And the story of it, what we found out was the guy who owned it only bought it so his daughter could use it half the month when she was going to school nearby. And he put it on the market in the spring, but she still needed use of it until like July, which is very unorthodox. No bank is, if you're doing a mortgage, which we were, no bank is going to have an escrow period that long. He didn't know what he was doing really. And I also don't think he knew how valuable what he had was. Again, going back to the emotional attachment to a property or the value that you place on it. It was just a means to an end for him. He had thrown some money into it, knew he was going to sell it and probably profit, and his daughter could live there part-time when she needed to. And so if I'm trying to remember the timeline of how all this happened, we sent our agent. She called me right away and is like, I'm sending you video of this place. She goes, you need to put an offer in this week or it's going to be gone by the weekend. She goes, don't let that, they're going to do an open house this week. And if we can get an offer in before we need to try to do that, how soon can you get up here? So I think we went up within 24 hours.
It's
Because,
incredible.
yeah, when we got that phone call, she was a very good real estate agent and knew what she was talking about. So we rushed up there and probably, I mean, within the first couple of minutes of being there, knew that this is it. This is the one we need to put an offer in on this place. And we weren't 30 minutes out of town, and they had accepted our offer, and we got it for like $10,000 less than they were asking,
Incredible.
which
Incredible.
is a very annoying story nowadays. And I'm sorry for everybody that's trying to buy real estate. I don't think that would happen today.
Well, I'm not sure with the where
Yeah, I
interest
don't
rates
know.
are, where interest rates are, I think that home prices are actually a lot. It's a buyer's market because less inventory is being bought because of the interest rates. So I don't know. I've seen them go both ways. But with that being said, you find the property and you. I just lost my question. Give me a sec. You find the property and your husband's a DP, and you mentioned that thing about your husband owning a production agency, but it's just him freelancing. I resonate with that so much because that's still a production agency, and I will die on that hill saying that it's still a production agency. I don't care if it's just him.
It
It's
is. He
still a production.
produces shoots and he crews everything. It's just we don't have people in house.
Yeah.
Everybody's a 1099. We just don't have on staff people. Yeah,
Which
that's I guess
brings
the
me
big
to my next
difference.
question is that you mentioned this part, and I think it's so crucial for people to know this. When you're W-2 qualifying for loans is like a piece of cake. You can get FHA loans, you can get conventional 10% down loans. When you're 1099, we're the most unlendable people on the face of the planet. And banks want 25% down, banks want like your entire life savings and firstborn child. What was that lending process like for you guys on this A-frame, being 1099?
I mean, it honestly wasn't that bad. I think for a couple of reasons. One, his company had been established for quite some time. He hadn't just started it. We also, the home that we live in, we had lived in that house for at least 5 years. So, and we have really good credit. We had gotten pre-qualified. So we went to our bank that we knew that we were going to get the loan from and had them do the pre-qualification letter. And I even think they had pre-qualified us for like far more than we were comfortable with. And I told them, write the letter for this amount just because
You don't want
that's
the
more
seller to know how
yeah,
much.
I was like, this is more my speed. I don't want people pushing me in one way or another. Like I'm comfortable with this number. This is the number that we don't want to go over. And so we just kind of had everything in place before we went out there. Again, this was 2019. I know things are very different now, but we had a ton of money in the bank. There wasn't anything else going on. And I think that, again, just goes to some people are more comfortable with risk than others. I think my husband is a risk taker, but we do it in a way that's cautious and makes sense for us. And so the foundation's always in place beforehand. When we buy camera equipment, the question is, okay, we're making this huge investment, but is it going to pay for itself in the next 12 months? Then it's a good buy. That's just kind of how
Hmm.
we approach everything. And we made sure that we had all our ducks in a row before we even came to the offer table. So there wasn't any reason for that to be a reason the deal fell through.
Yeah. He's like, honey, we need a red or we need a Gemini, and it's going to be $30,000. We're going to buy it.
I have to tell you, if he came to me and wanted to buy a $30,000 camera, I would be fine with it because the last big camera purchase we made, I thought it was like $100,000 with like glass. I mean, it's a house. So that yeah,
Are
the
you
camera
guys renting
industry
out
is
your camera
crazy.
gear?
We do rent some things out.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice. I
sometimes
know a
we do
lot of
that.
people
Yeah.
that use that as an investment strategy. They rent out their reds, they rent out their camera, and
Yeah.
I mean it pays for their camera, which is cool.
I mean, yeah, it can. You just have to be careful, have really good insurance, that stuff, because if it's not somebody else's, they're not as, again, it's the value
I
you
think I,
place and kind of that emotional attachment. They don't necessarily take care of it as well as you do when it's your own, but yeah, for sure, when we're not using something, if somebody needs it, we'll rent it out.
absolutely. So you buy the home, you renovate it. How much, if you don't mind asking, how much did you spend on the renovation costs?
I want to say initially we spent about 30,000 on renovations
Okay.
because yeah,
And
we
then
didn't
did
the
you do it like traditional real estate where you bought the home, renovated it, and then refied and pulled your cash out?
no, we
You
didn't
just
do
left it all
that.
in there.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah,
it.
because now like we hardly have I mean, I don't want to say we're very close to paying that mortgage off, but we're probably going to pay the house we live in off first before our oldest goes to college. And then we'll work on the other one. Because again, when we bought that, we have like subprime rates
Hmm.
on our loans. So no, we didn't pull it out because we didn't need, I don't know, we didn't need to. That was never something we even thought about doing.
Yeah, yeah.
We had to buy a bunch. And like, I guess when I say too, when we renovated, a lot of that was refurnishing the place. So I don't know if it would technically work the same way because it wasn't structural.
You're not adding
I don't
bedrooms
know
or
the
bathrooms.
legalities of that. Yeah. So I don't know what type of renovation qualifies you for that, but everything we came in and did was purely cosmetic. We didn't gut anything. And that was really important to us too. And again, I think why it feels unique is we didn't rip all the character out of it for the sake of making everything look brand new.
Hmm.
And that could be a deal breaker for some people. I'm sure there were people who stayed with us who didn't like that, but that was never our intention for what we wanted the space to be. So we didn't come in and take everything out. We got rid of a lot of things, but paint was our best friend in a lot of instances. And then it was just refurnishing the place and it was very cluttered and crowded. And that's one of I think you get that tip a lot from people, but people's own homes tend to be cluttered. They're lived in. If you have kids, they come with a lot of stuff. It's really refreshing when you go away to go to a space that does not have that. That's one of my favorite things about staying places is when it's just like not quite a blank slate, but there's just not the extra stuff. I
Yep.
think that that's immediate blood pressure reducer for someone like me.
I also think that when people are only there for a couple days, they don't need the typical things that are going to be in
Yeah.
a traditional home that you live in full time. When you are just in a place for a night or two, we found that a lot of, like, this is a hot take here, like just clothing storage in general. We have a lot of smaller units. So it's like tiny homes that are 280 square feet. We save room by not really offering a closet because a lot of people are not unpacking suitcases. And so I think that when to go to your point of when you are creating these units, having the thought process in mind of what does a 2-night, a 3-night stay really entail, and that will allow you to, as you said, declutter your environment. And so I think that's super crucial
Yeah.
as well.
For sure. It's setting, yeah, when you're setting up a place for short-term stays, I think it's even different than people who do mid or long-term stays. I could totally do long-term stays. It doesn't make sense for my business model. But when you are, if that is something you're going to do, you need to think about things a little bit differently because of how long guests are going to be in the space.
Now you put a jacuzzi in the unit. What does first, was that a smart idea? Do you stand by it? And then second,
Yes.
do you what is the I want to know the ROI on that jacuzzi and whether you think that the maintenance and the upkeep of the jacuzzi is worth the
Yeah.
extra rental income.
I I think you need to again go and look at your market and where your place is going to be. There are certainly rentals in my market that don't have them. They don't charge nearly what we do nightly. I think for a number of reasons, but that's one of them. It is kind of a quote unquote standard amenity for the area. Just like I don't know. I compare us a lot to the coast because in North Carolina, we're very lucky. The beaches are not very far, and then you've got the mountains also not very far. They're kind of a little sort of equidistant depending on where you are in the state. And there are certain things that are just standard or things like people like pools at beach rentals. They do like that and seek that out. I think that it definitely we stay booked and busy and we're able to charge far more because we have that. I think hot tubs are pains in the butt. I don't have a good story with ours. People have often commented it is the nicest hot tub they've ever had at a place. It is very nice. It is very sensitive and persnickety. And I think we would have been better served getting a less nice hot tub that still does what a hot tub needs to do and not quite so fancy, and we would have been fine. We have had two brand new hot tubs at our place in the time that we've owned it.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
And you still
But I
think
did
and you
not
still
pay for
think
both
it's
of them. That was a year's worth of arguing with the distributor that we bought
yeah.
our particular one from, and then finally just being like, you guys know that this is not right. Nothing that has gone on since we've purchased this thing have been right. It is under warranty. You need to replace it. And they did replace it. It was a fiasco.
I
Because
couldn't even
in order
imagine.
for me to Oh, it was no, no one recommends this experience. Avoid at all costs. That's why I'm saying just I know lots of people who've only spent $4,000 on a hot tub off Wayfair and they have had none of the issues I have had. So if you are searching for one for a rental property, you don't need to get the fanciest one. Just get one that's reliable. Like you're looking for like solid boyfriend material in your hot tub, just steady Eddie, reliable. It does not have to be the fanciest or most expensive. You just want one that's not going to give you trouble. And like ours is on our deck, and so it involves a crane to get one on and
Oh
off.
my God.
It's not like an easy process. So all of that said, if something is a highly sought out amenity in your market, you will be able to charge more nightly if you have said amenity. So, and again, we approached, I was like, well, we can easily have this paid off within a year. So it makes sense for us, to go ahead and do that. So yeah,
You heard it
I
here
don't regret it.
first.
I just, yeah,
Emily South, hot tubs are worth it, but if you're gonna buy one that's boyfriend material, one that is steady
yeah,
Eddie.
yes, yeah,
That is
that's
the
my
greatest
recommendation.
explanation of about hot tubs I've ever heard
And
ever.
I mean, people ask all the time. They're like, "What is this hot tub?" I was like, "Don't buy my hot tub. I'm saying that out of love. Like, just don't get the one I got because it's very persnickety. But if you think that it will increase bookings and up that nightly rate, I would go ahead and do it. Just plan that you got to keep them clean, and then you need to build that into your cleaning fee because we have ours cleaned every stay.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's smart. I think that's I know a lot of other hosts that do that as well. And I think that upkeeping a hot tub, just as you said, it's difficult. It is a net positive, and I think it's a you'll be able to pay off what you put into it the first year, but it's
yeah,
still it's that additional headache. It's the additional guest saying, "Why isn't the hot tub working?" Or it's the additional guest
hmm,
saying, "I thought this was going to be cleaner." That you're going to have to that's the pros and cons of it, right? And I think that
yeah, yeah.
just as you said, I don't think that it's a bad part, but I also we're in Arizona and we have to haul all of our water. And so there's just no way that we could do it just because
I mean,
of
in some
like,
places, it's just not. Yeah, it's not feasible. I've seen. A lot of people are getting into saunas and are putting
mm-hmm.
saunas on their property, which I think could be awesome too. But I was like, those are just as expensive as hot tubs, and I wonder how often people break them.
Yeah,
I would love to know if you ever talk to somebody who has saunas. I would love to know what the maintenance compared to a hot tub is like.
yeah, that's a great question. I'll let you know if we do. Now, your Instagram is one of the more aesthetic Instagrams and put together Instagram. Your feed's beautiful. Your Instagram entirely is super great. What does your photo development side of your business look like? And then who do you have a separate person that manages your socials?
I manage our socials. That's
I,
me.
I could have guessed that with your aesthetic and the way that your Instagram looks.
Yeah.
I could have guessed.
It's not, I don't want to say that I'm like a control freak, but I feel this way about a lot of things in life. When it's important to you, no one else is going to care as much as you do when it's deeply important to you. I don't care what that is, whether it's like a relationship, like kids that you're raising. If something's it's very rare that you're going to find people who care as much as you do about doing something and doing it well. Initially, I didn't know what I was doing. I wish I had documented the process of the renovation a little bit more, but I literally had two babies. Our boys were very, very young. My daughter was still really little because this is like 5 years ago now when all this was going on. And I
Super
think like
mom over
everybody,
here.
a lot, well, I might do my best. And they'll tell you how bad that was when they're grown up and in therapy, I'm sure. But there were like so much has happened to everyone in 5 years. So it's weird when I look back and think about that specific time. Um, but I think I started creating the account around the time that cabin culture started to seem like a thing on socials. And I just got good at connecting with other people in that genre. I am not a talented photographer by any means. I wouldn't call myself a content creator. I think I can write decently, and so the captions are mine, how I'm putting things together, but the visuals, that's not me. Initially, and my husband's not a still photographer. He can take very pretty pictures, but he's not a still photographer, and anybody in that world will tell you you're kind of one or the other. It's very rare that somebody does both and does them well. I did at one point early on, I made him go essentially shoot a commercial of the house. And it needs to be updated because it's very out of date after all the things that we've done to it, but we've just not been able to make that happen. Mostly because we need time where no one's there and he's not booked on an actual paying job. So that just has not aligned for me lately to make that happen. But I found good photographers and partnered up with them. And I think that has made all the difference in my business and how the space is perceived and how it's sought out because the they took photos that reflected in its absolute best light. And I think, like, my favorite pictures of it, the people feel the same way about the house I do. And it shows in the images that they captured. And then it has translated to how our ideal guests experience that space because it has allowed the right people to find us.
Our
Yeah.
only real marketing as short-term rental operators and short-term rental hosts is our photos, are our photos. I mean, when you're on Airbnb, that's your lifeblood, right? Airbnb will prioritize your listing if it gets more clicks. The way it gets more clicks is by having that hero photo stand out enough to get the clicks. And so that they'll prioritize your listing if people are clicking it, and because it'll generate the most amount of sales or purchases or booked nights for Airbnb, increasing their revenue. So I can't stress that enough with people that are getting into the space is people will spend hundred thousands of dollars on buying a property and then shoot the property with an iPhone. And it's like,
Yeah.
if you just spent the extra $500,000 to get professional photography, you would be fully occupied. And so I think that's what you do phenomenally well, is that your content is really, really spectacular. Now, I call them the dream team because it's the lifeblood behind the organization. It's the people that keep the property up and running. It's your handyman, your cleaners, your on-site manager if you have one. Who does your dream team consist of?
I have a fantastic cleaner. I've been working with her for years. It actually started, she was working for the person I contracted for maintaining our hot tub, and that's how I met her. Um, and then I was at a point, she was we clicked on a personal level, got along really well. She ended up being the person that was always coming to handle the hot tub maintenance. And so I got to a point where I said, I don't understand why there's this third person involved for either one of us. It's not making our lives any easier. She's also like a single mom with a side, extremely busy person, but cares very much about the work that she does and doing a job and doing it really well. And I was like, we don't need this third party in here. I just want you to just work directly with me instead. And then I got to a point where I needed to make some changes to the people I was using. And she reached out and said, I used to clean houses as well. I still do for a couple people. I'd be willing to take your property on. A big part of I think why we work so well is she doesn't live very far from my property where we're located. It you're in the same town and it can take you 30 to 45 minutes to get from one side to the other because windy one lane mountain roads. And I think part of the issue I was having with my old team post COVID and all of their staffing issues was we were just very far away. And it just wasn't cost effective for them when you factored in all of the commuting that they were doing to get out to our place. And, very gratefully, we're extremely busy. And sometimes people don't want a property that is as busy as ours. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but some people just
Yeah, no, it
don't
makes
want to
complete
have
sense.
to. Yeah, and so it worked out really well just because of where she's located and the ease with which she can get back and forth to our property. I get a good team of people in place. We have had issues where I have needed like an electrician or a plumber. Find people in your market that you can establish a relationship with and you can get them to your property quickly. That has been key and critical for me, and just establishing relationships and taking care of the people who do good work for you, and keeping them happy, being fair in what you pay them, how you communicate with them, giving ample notice. I know everybody has different systems for how they do things, but I like to give her a month out notice on, I
Hmm.
send her like on the 15th every month, hey, here's what's coming up next month. Just ask simple things like asking her What does your daughter have going on that you don't, like, under any circumstances, you can't handle doing a turnover at my property. I'll set my calendar up so that doesn't happen. Like, I know when her daughter's birthday is. I'm not having her come turn my property over when she needs to go be a mom and have a birthday party for her kiddo. I don't want to be treated that way by people that I work with. So why would I do it to the people that work for me? And I mean, she is kind of the backbone to the business because she's there locally and I'm not. And then, yeah, handyman. My husband loves fixing stuff, but I have to remind him a lot of the time that you going up there for a whole day to go work on a bunch of stuff is great, but is it the most effective use of your time when we could just pay someone this much money to go do it that's already there? That conversation happens a lot, but definitely having an excellent cleaner, very, close and local to your property. Some, I guess some people would call them an inspector, or I know some people have like a stager that'll come in. I
An
wish.
auditor, like someone to check after
Yeah,
the
an
cleans.
auditor or something like that. Yeah, that's something I toy around with having because again, being respectful of the people who come in and clean your property, that's their job. They're coming in to clean and do a really thorough job and make sure it doesn't look like anybody has been there before the next guest comes in. It's kind of not fair to ask them to do the job of an auditor and inspector on other things. And I'm so jealous of in my market, there are a couple people I know of who live locally and host, and just what they're able to do because of that is so different than what I can do from being 2 hours away. And it's, I think, a level of hosting to aspire to just because they're there and they're not coming in and cleaning their properties. They have other people doing that. So they're coming in and staging things a certain way, leaving local wine or treats for people, those handwritten notes. And can you do that from 2 hours away or doing it remotely? You can. It just requires a lot of planning on the front end every month that I just
Yeah,
don't have. I'll be very honest. I'm not sitting down and writing handwritten notes for everybody. Yeah.
we have been toying around with the idea of hiring an auditor on our properties because just as you said, it's the cleaner's job is to clean, but it's nice to have a third party person come in and being able to see. Our cleaners do such a great job, but it's hard to, when your mindset's in the clean, it's hard to then take a step back once you're done with the clean to then think of as the guest. And it's almost easier to have fresh eyes. I know I compare a
Yeah.
lot of the time to editing. If I edit a video, I have to spend 2 days or 2 or 3 days or even a week away from it in order to see it again with fresh eyes.
Hmm.
And obviously you can't do that if you're turning over property and then the guest checks out at 10 and the guest checks in at 3 or 4, you only have a window, right? And so having that extra person to come in, just fresh eyes on a property, see like, oh, like these throw pillows can be placed in this way to be more look
Hmm.
like it's presented in a better way. And so we've been toying around with the idea we're going to implement that in our business as well. And so I do think I don't think that first time short-term rental hosts should start off with that right away. I think that they
Yeah, I
should
don't think
develop.
that it's necessary, but a good thing to aspire to.
Yes, and that's
Yeah.
beautifully said. I think that you should learn the business without it. It's I'm gonna keep on using movie references because your husband's a DP, and it's like it. My dad's a composer, and it's very easy to build emotion in a movie when you add music. It's very hard to drive emotion and to make someone cry in a scene that has no music. And so the best directors that he's worked with will not allow him to put music into a piece until people start crying with no music. Because he knows once that extra music is added, the tears are just going to flow. And so I forgot why I made that analogy. But yeah, it ends up coming to like that extra eye on your property is going to deliver. I was stepping it from when you start your business. You want to have a full conceptual idea of how your business operates before you use an auditor as a crutch, because I do think it is almost a crutch that you're going to deploy. And if you can learn how to navigate with your cleaners and give them, because this is a very long-winded way of saying that I think people use an auditor as a crutch because they're not able to create a roadmap and a written out hat write-up for their cleaners. Mm-hmm. They're not willing to like nitpick their cleaners and make sure that their cleaners do a really, really good job, and they're then relying on their auditor instead of just taking the time with their cleaners to show them how you want your property and your way of cleaning so that they can just get it done the way that you want to get it done, but also at the same time treating your cleaners with respect. So I think there's a dance there that we as hosts and operators have to kind of play, is treating that cleaner with respect, but also making sure that they buy into the way that you want your property to be done.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. So I don't know. I'll figure it out eventually. But so far, what we've been doing, at least, especially for the last like 2 or 3 years, has worked really well. So I'm hesitant to mess with it too much. I think my energy could be better spent working on some other parts of the business, but it's definitely at the back of my mind that it would be nice to have for sure.
Absolutely. So you use Logify as your booking channel or as your property management software. We do as well for one of our units. We have used Guesty. We use Logify. I'm playing with a bunch of them right now, and we're in the phase of testing them and putting some of our units on some and some on the other. And we have found we like Logify. What has been the easiest thing on Logify? What parts of Logify do you like for the direct booking channels, and what don't you like?
So being on Logify is actually pretty new for me. I know we're all making this push towards direct bookings, and I support that. It's not the easiest thing, I will say that. And I do think people are smart enough to know that there is a fair amount more work involved when you're going to go that route. But from the beginning, I was always like, well, we need to have these social channels. And then when COVID happened, I was like, I really want to have my own website and email list. And my husband would be like, why are you making so much extra work for yourself? We're so busy through Airbnb. I get that, but I don't own any of that. And really, I don't own my Instagram account. It could go away overnight. It's happened to a lot of people. So having digital assets that you own and are your own, I think are very important when you are starting any type of business that is your own. And so I just kind of got to the point where I think the landscape is shifting and changing. Airbnb is quarterly rolling out new things that they're doing, sometimes for our benefit, sometimes not. And I wanted to be in a position and in a place. And we've been on other OTAs too when we first started. And in that, I used that first year. I was like, I'm going to see how we do and what's working for us and what isn't. And at the end of that year, we were on VRBO, and I did not like the platform from a user standpoint. I just didn't think it was user friendly as an owner. We had maybe 5 bookings in an entire calendar year. The juice wasn't worth the squeeze. When I looked at how much money we made on those 5 bookings, I'm over here going, I know that I can get that amount of bookings from Airbnb, or those people will go find me over there, and they did. So, because
Emily, I cannot agree with that more. I love that. I don't mean to cut you off, but we had the exact same experience.
No, you're fine.
We found that VRBO just didn't have the same ROI. It wasn't worth the extra hassle of the 5-6 reservations that we were getting off of it. We'd rather just We'd rather just make it up on one platform, but then focus on direct bookings to gather emails in order to have our own consumer base. Because I think that...
Yeah, that's exactly what happened to me.
I think as more people do this, Airbnb, bless them, but it's their customer. and we're just the inner, we're the product side of their customer. So we deliver the product that they are offering their customer. And so I think what they're dealing with now is that they have some operators who just don't care. And so since the operator never got the customer, they have a feeling that they don't need to treat that customer a certain way. So from the guest side, they're being reflected. They're like, well, Airbnb sucks because this operator performed poorly. And so I think that, and then we as operators are like, well, we're giving them 15% of our income here. They need to hold weight and get us more bookings, and that's why some people are dropping off of Airbnb. And so I think that there's definitely a dance there of being able to, something needs to change in order for Airbnb to make hosts develop a relationship with their consumers more directly, because it'll impact how hosts treat their guests, and it'll impact how we want to stay on the platform, or whether or not we do just go to direct bookings, because we have a direct booking channel as well. And we are more and more, we're like, I know digital marketing. I could just run ads and fill my calendar with direct bookings and go against Airbnb. And I think that as the educational system increases on YouTube, and I call it YouTube University, as people are able to learn more about how to run ads to their property, and more of these people and more of us just walk people through how to start a direct booking channel, how to get ads to their customers, Airbnb is going eventually to become, they're going to have to make a big change to keep us and keep the customer.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm seeing more and more people. I've kind of soft launched ours. I haven't gone that hard into it, just because like at this point, I don't have a ton of availability. Like, I don't think I have significant availability until February of next year, which I'm very grateful for. But I want to have this ability, not only for myself, but for our guests, especially like really good guests who've already stayed with us once or twice via Airbnb. I'm more than happy to have them book direct and save a little bit of money on those booking fees. We travel, it's really funny my youngest are 7 and 8 now. They've never stayed in a hotel until this Thanksgiving. We've always just and they're like, this is kind of cool, because it's just not what, as a family, we have done with them.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, I would just looking at renting a beach house in the summer, those places want that week-long booking. And then when you factor in the taxes and the fees, it is insanely expensive. So I feel it too as a consumer. And so I think taking ownership of your business and having that direct booking option, and then extending that olive branch to guests that we've had good experience in the past. I trust you enough to let to have you come in this way and save yourself some of that money. I think travel for a lot of people is an extreme luxury, and whether or not you are a luxury property, people getting to use their discretionary income financially and time-wise it's a lot for a lot of people to carve out time from work and other obligations to go on trips and vacations. So thinking about that for your guests, and extending that opportunity to them, like we can still hit our numbers that we need to, because it does cost money to run a property and run it well, but also give some room and leeway to those consumers so that it's viable for them. Because that is a concern of mine, is, are we going to get to a point where this is no longer a viable option for travelers, and they are going to start making different decisions and going elsewhere when they're looking for lodging?
Absolutely. That's very interesting to think about, actually. I haven't thought about it from a longevity play of, is this even going to be viable in the future? And I think that the market will just adapt, and the market will dictate the prices that we can rent our properties at.
There's a little bit of a lag. I lost you for a second.
No worries. I said I think that I completely agree in that the market will end up dictating the prices, and I think the market will
Yeah.
decide on whether the property's cash flow and if they create a good return or not, and just that they always have. And I think that won't change. And I think that the discretionary income that people spend, they're going to be as things become more expensive, they're always going to find ways to save money. And if they could save money on direct booking channels, I think there will be a large push for consumers to go direct bookings and to save the extra 10-15%. Now, this next section it's one of my favorite sections. I love it. I call it the hills that we die on. And it's the things that guests might come and stay at our property and say, we love the property, but it would be great if you did this. And you're like, nope, it was designed this way. We refuse. Our tiny home doesn't have a TV. We do it on purpose. People ask for a TV. We say no TV. We will die on the hill of no TV. Is there anything that is a part of your A-frame that is a hill that you will die on?
I have a TV hill. We don't have them in the bedrooms. We have 2 living rooms. There are TVs there, and I will not put them in the bedrooms. It's come up a couple of times, and I'm like, no. From an aesthetic standpoint, there's no good way to do it. And I say that as when we bought it, there were TVs in every bedroom, and it was janky and ugly and unnecessary, and they got taken out with the stuffed raccoon that got thrown out. And I'm not bringing them back in. So that is a hill I will die on. What are some? That's my one big one. I'm trying to think. Oh, this has only been brought up, I think, by 2 or 3 people. Our front door faces a wooded hill. Like it does not face another house. It does not face the road. I should say, when you come up our property off the main road, you actually drive up the back of the house and circle around to the front. So if somebody wanted to look in this front door, they would have to be trespassing on our property. It's not visible unless you are standing in the woods across from the house or on the hill. Uh, when we bought it, there were little curtains everywhere, little like cafe curtains all over the place in the bathrooms and on this door, and it was not giving any type of good aesthetic. I hated it, and they're like, I just feel creepy at night that there's nothing on the glass window of the store. I was like, well, then I don't know what to tell you, because if you're that worried and concerned that someone's spying on you, you're probably a goner anyway if you've ever watched any horror movie ever. If they've gotten that close to the house, we have bigger problems
so we
than the
interviewed this
curtain.
guy named Nick who has a property called Index Cabins in Washington, and
Yeah, yeah, yes.
he has no curtains in the shower, and his showers face the wilderness, and he's like, that's a hill I'll die on. And it's a steam
I
shower,
lost
so
you at the
if they
best
wanted
part.
privacy, they could
Where
steam
do
up the
the
shower
showers?
and do it on purpose.
Hold
But that
on,
is
where
a
do the
hill.
showers face? You
They,
cut out right at the best part.
They face the same thing, the wilderness. Like there's nothing. He's like, you'll have a deer stare at you, and people constantly tell him that they want to have a curtain in the shower, and he says that nope, it's a steam shower. If you want privacy, you can have steam, but other than that, we are dying on that hill. And I love that
That's
as
so
well.
funny.
I think it's just right on par with I love hearing the little intricacies of hosts
And I
hills
think,
that they
like, just, yeah, make it not a surprise. Put it in your listing. Be very clear. There was some feedback we had gotten, like, in the last year or so, and I kind of went back in and I tweaked the listing. And I was like, if you want a super modern A-frame that was a new build, please don't book my house, because you're going to be disappointed. That's not who we are and what we are. Um, Yeah, I think just no surprises, and just being very specific with people. And if I was like, there's some quirky things about our old house. It is an old house at the end of the day. I tell people in the listing when it was built.
yeah.
Yeah, no,
I
the
love
hill
that. I
it
think as
is
long as you're
funny,
upfront
but it's
about
your
it.
business. It's your business, and you get to run it the way you want to. I do see some hosts that I frankly think get bullied by guests into changing their operating mode and changing the system of how they do things. And so, yes, you want to be conscientious of if you're getting repeated feedback on something that is a negative that you need to fix, by all means, fix it. But individual preference, like you can go do that at your cabin when you have one,
I
sir. If you want curtains, you can put them up there.
I completely agree. It's our and that's why that's the beauty of this, I think, is that we have our own aesthetic and we want to put our own aesthetic into the world. It's like it's our version of art and we're putting our art in the world, and it's subjective at the end of the day. How you design your home is subjective. If you design it how you like it and you have the intentionality behind your design, I think that's all that matters. And I think that you will find other people like yourself that want to book it. And anyone else who doesn't like it, they can go. They can. I don't know. I was going to say a bunch of bad words, but
Yeah, I mean, but there's lots of there's lots of places to rent, and hopefully they'll find their spot
yeah. Okay,
that
so
makes them happy.
last section, and it's my favorite. I feel like I say that about every section. Last section is, I call it experiential travel, because I think what we're offering is not just a place to stay. I say this all the time, so all the people that have listened to the podcast know what I'm about to say, but I really do think that it's not just a place to stay. It's a place to disconnect in order to reconnect. It's a place to really have that true experience of getting in nature, unplugging from phones, reconnecting with loved ones, and having that time with your family or with your loved ones. Is there a story that resonates with you that happened at your property with guests that really showcases that experience that you guys are offering?
Gosh, we have been so fortunate over the years that a lot of people celebrate big milestones. There's a lot of like big birthdays that have been celebrated at our house. People have come for honeymoons, which I think is incredible. And that I always want it to be done a certain way when they're coming for these big things. One in particular that was so special for us was, I didn't know. I think at the time that they booked this, really beautiful couple were coming and they were getting married. They weren't getting married at our house, but they had the photographer come and do a lot of the photos at our house. And she happens to be a local photographer that I was already following anyway and just loved her personality. She's kind of a prolific wedding photographer in our market. But she's a very funny human and she does a lot of hysterical reels as part of her content, talking about being a business owner and being a wedding photographer in particular, because it's a lifestyle that when you work in that industry. And she's just a wonderful woman. And so what happened was these people booked and then told me that Whitney was coming to, and is it okay if they have all these photos shot at our house? And I loved it, and I just have been friendly with Whitney. And they were okay with it. They told her she could do this. She gave me the assets, like,
Oh yeah.
for nothing. And it's just like, it was a thing like, if I'm sharing this, I'm absolutely going to credit you, because credit where credit is due. That's a huge thing for me on social media. Just PSA for everyone out there, like, if you're sharing photography that you didn't take the image of, you better credit the person who did, because there's like licensing things involved in that, copyright things involved in that. It's just not nice to use other people's work and not give credit. But that was a really cool experience. And we've had lots of opportunities where people have come for really big things, or gotten sweet notes about, like, I had a mom come one Christmas and she had just gone through like a really terrible divorce, and it was her trying to make new memories with her boys and this new version of what their life looked like. So you just, honestly, when you have places like this, you become part of people's story of their human experience. And I think that's pretty cool, and not something to be taken lightly. If you are going to be a space that provides the backdrop for those big moments in life, it's a pretty heavy responsibility. So rise up to it and make sure that you're able to manage people's expectations, but also meet them.
Emily, that was beautifully said. I could not have said that better. Thank you so much for dropping as much knowledge bombs as you just did on us. I think that you really, really gave some amazing insight. And thank you for being on the podcast today.
Oh, I hope it's helpful. Thank you for inviting me on. It was fun.